You've not heard from this guy all day. He's not been around. He hasn't been making you whoop and cheer and do all those kind of weird things that no accountant really likes to do. So to finish our day off, we're going to get Rizwan back on stage. And actually, he's not going to talk about the next session. He's going to talk about the change for growth and the opportunity that brings not just this industry, but also to this region. So let's flip the script, and now let's all together, I want you to woo, cheer, jump up and down, clap, do all the things he's making you do all day for everybody else, but for him this time. So can you do that after 3? 1, 2, 3, and the crowd goes wild! Very much.
Hello again. So I'm going to share some stories and try to connect with you. And the main aim for that is whatever we've heard today, how can we speed up and take action and learn to grow with it, right? But before I get into that, I want to ask everyone a question, and trust me, I will explain why you should be listening to me on the topic of change a little later. But I want to ask you this. Do you guys remember your last moment of realization that made you change? How many of you do? Do you ever think of your moment of realizations that lead to a change? Can you show me by raise of hands? Not many. That means I chose a good topic. So my whole story is based around this one thing. And I keep calling it a story because change is a story, everything is a story. The whole point is, what is a moment of realization and why does it help? And why is it so useful? This is something I use in my advisory engagements with the governments when I'm talking about the next 5 years and how to attract investments. I recently did that in Saudi Arabia. Or whether I'm working with the Abu Dhabi government and talking about investing into something complicated as agriculture tech, growing meat out of, in the lab, things like that, right? So that's the sort of approach that I kind of use, where I try to create moments of realizations and share them. So everyone works towards the same thing, and that can lead changes. So the thing is, we all want to change and grow, right? We know that. But the thing is, how do we do it? How do we make change intentional and empowering? Because, you know, not all change is good. There's so many changes that turn out to be bad, that gives us a bad experience, and we maybe go back and start doing something else. Thinking about change is inevitable. You know, we were all babies and now we're not, but that change is happening by default. And the thing we need to think of is the good change that we want. We normally want 3 things. We want comfort, gain, or growth. Let me explain that a little. We all want to have more money, more free time, more of something that we already have, right? That's growth. Sometimes we don't like to do Excel sheets. We don't want to be doing that. And we want to change that for our own comfort because we don't like it. And how is gain different to growing? Well, gain is about something that I don't have. Maybe I don't have AI skills, but I want to have them, right? So these are 3 main instances of change that can lead to growth. But the thing is, the first thing to tap into empowering yourself and making it actually happen is to think, is this happening to me by default or intentionally? Because most people who change intentionally are one of the first group of people who adapt to something, and by default is because, well, the world is changing and you are late, and you know, that's not where you want to be. Now, I promised you that I will explain why I am talking on this topic and how I relate to it and why am I going to be saying what I'm saying. So I have been educated, worked, moved between 5 countries, right? I changed paths, so I started off with an admission into a medical school, did not go, did 2 years in engineering, dropped out, then I went to an architecture school. Well, I got admitted, decided not to go, became an accountant, Worked in an accounting firm 6 months, never did accounting again, only did finance, right? And that was really annoying for my parents, but I was like, I want to find my way. That's one thing. I have opened up a pizza shop and closed it down. I've opened up a burger shop and closed it down. I have worked with 3 billionaires directly. I have lost over $100 million for them. Trust me, I made more. I made up. Don't worry about it. When I was around 15, I actually also lost the ability to some extent to read and write, and I had to relearn how to read and write. It's a weird, rare thing that I had. So throughout that, what happened when I look back is that changing was becoming like second nature to me. I was adapting to things faster because of the exposure and all that. And through that, I have helped companies, countries, and professionals and students understand change and make it more impactful, right? A recent example, I was in a bank in Jordan. I trained 40 trainers within the bank to teach the bank investment management, right? So now that I hope I have convinced you that I know a thing or two about change, and I'm sure you guys do too, and I've introduced what changing intentionally for growth is, comfort, gain, and growth, right? So I spoke about moment of realization, right? A moment of realization is the point in time where you actually start getting annoyed by a situation you're in, right? Let me give you an example. I remember this was like 6, 7 years ago, and I was part of a meeting. We were talking about this business where the staff was never on time, right? And I asked the managers or the directors, what have they done to try to fix it? They'll be like, we made it stricter, we cut their salary, we do everything, but they just don't come on time. And they were like, can you do something and try something? I was like, yeah, because you're doing everything except taking them on a journey to realize it. They're like, well, how do you do it? And I said, through telling a story. So I actually, asked the staff. They were in a room, and we asked them, hey, do you have kids? And they're like, yeah. I was like, oh, how do you celebrate your kids' birthdays? And they're all getting excited. Their emotions tap in. They're like, oh, we love it. I was like, hey, would you like it if, your kid is expecting his birthday party, you've made it that it's at 4 p.m., but you show up at 5? How do you feel when you go and look at your kid, right? And they go, oh, one of those guys who's feeling really emotional is like, oh, no, she's my princess. I cannot do that to her. And I was like, that kind of feeling, why can't you have it towards your work? Because your work allows you to give that pleasure to your family. Your time, your money is getting back into the family. And that was a moment of realization, because I did not really say you need to change. I just pointed out something else, like a metaphor, something that's similar, and brought it into their reality, where they are now convincing themselves and learning from one experience and moving it to the other, right? So that is what I call, by creating, crafting, chasing, critically thinking to create more moments of realization. Now, I have repeated create, and I'll tell you why. So crafting, chasing, and let's talk about that. Sometimes it's better not to wait for a moment of realization. For example, I became an entrepreneur because I was in London. I was in Edgware Road, and I was sitting with my friends, and there are 2 really old guys came and sat next to me. I was still doing my accounting courses. My friends were being boring, so I ignored them, and I started talking to the guys next to me. There were 2 hedge fund managers. And they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm here in London studying accounting, doing my accounting exams. And they're like, oh, pretty nice. And he's like, my dad was an accountant. I was like, oh, nice. Was he in the Big Four? Because for me, that was the success. Big Four, get there. My dad was a CFO. My brother was already in PwC. So, my path was set. This guy goes, well, my father was an accountant, but he never spent a day in a firm. And I was like, whoa, you can do that? He's like, what did he do then? Oh, he's like, oh, he had his own holding company. And, then he explained the businesses to me. And that was my moment of realization, that I don't have to be working in an accounting firm. I can be doing my own thing, which is what I do now. But the thing is, I did not create, craft, or chase that moment. I only critically thought about it, right? So this was something coming to me rather than me going for something. So when you change it around, when you start creating, crafting, and chasing these moments of realizations, start holding yourself accountable for how many moments of realization have I had last year, right? You might not act on them, but actually having them helps you sort of track and understand that, am I going after enough? And the thing is, when we move towards the end, I will make a case that the more moment of realizations you chase, create, craft, and then critically evaluate, the more you will become comfortable with change and better at changing in a positive way. And fast forward to when I first early started speaking, the biggest challenging speech I've ever had to give. I was in Pakistan. This is a group of underprivileged kids who are basically selling socks and everything, socks and whatever they can on the streets, right? They do not speak English, which is the language that I'm really comfortable with. I do speak Urdu, but I had to speak at a different level. And I'm normally used to talking to, I was adults who are ready to listen to me, right? These kids, not interested. It's an NGO, and I didn't go to sleep that night because I was like, what am I going to say to them, right? This was my biggest challenge of trying to change something or someone or try to have an impact through words. But I was struggling to come up with something to share with them. Now, what happened at that time was when I first got on, the guy before me, he was a really old CFO, and he was talking about credit cards and how to deal with credit, and they weren't listening, right? Because they don't have bank accounts. They're not going to talk about credit. So I got on, and I also first started off talking about financial literacy. I was like, you can grow money, you can earn money this way, that way. And then I realized I'm losing their interest. No matter what I say, I'm not going to connect, I'm not going to change. They're not going to change. So I had to change first. And I actually started talking to them. I asked, what do you do? Right? So I remember I picked this one guy who I thought was going to be a little more engaged. And he told me he sold caps, right? So at that moment, automatically, because like I said, change became a habit. I start doing it wherever I go, right? My accent changes sometimes when I'm talking to my friends from back in the UK. That also, I don't know why. Because that's part of my personality now. So immediately I changed it to what if I was running that business and I had no resources and I know none of the fancy words. I basically was able to explain, because you guys are accountants, I'll make it short. I was able to explain that if you're selling enough caps, you can take credit from your supplier, sell it to your friends as sort of a franchise or a partnership, sell more, add more things, and when you have enough money, how do you manage your cash flow to actually buy a shop and maybe create your own brand? All of that, I said that without sounding that sophisticated. I basically said it in my language, Urdu, the way they talked, and the main thing was, it was not just the story. Once I found out why he was selling caps, well, because he needed medicine for his mom who was sick, right? We made that the main thing. And then I realized that's the thing that drives his moments of realization, right? So knowing that doing this can lead to a better comfort for his mom, remember we spoke about comfort, growth, and gain, actually made everyone quiet. And as you can see, most of them were listening. Maybe one or two not. And this is another, sort of a moment of realization of mine that I want to share with you that could potentially help you in creating the changes around you. Now, having said that, this experience made me think. Because, I have friends and siblings, and I realized I was starting to get too much for them at some point. And I started thinking, why do most of us not appreciate or get enthusiastic about change, right? And I'll ask you a question. Complete honesty. Do you guys get enthusiastic about change? Do you get excited? You do? You do? I'm not talking about like a wardrobe change. I'm talking about like, yeah. So that was 6 people, and thank you for being honest. The first thing is, you need to be excited about change. You need to be annoyed when you're not changing. That's when you start calculating your moment of realizations, because you know what? Who wants to be number 1 at whatever they do? Who wants to be the top 1%? Here's the question. All right, talk to anyone who's a top 1% in their field, and they'll tell you what they're the fastest at changing and the most frequent at failing, right? These 2 things. That's why you need to start getting excited. But why do we not? Why do we not? That's a question. Generally, the life we live in, right? Anyone who tries to grow too fast, anyone who tries to be too comfortable, anyone who tries to gain a lot, finds themselves sometimes judged, is because of this society and the lifestyle we've created, right? Once we say you've achieved comfort, you're like, no, that's it. Alhamdulillah, I don't want more, I'm good, you know? Even though there's abundance that we can go for. Or we might be stuck at a job where we are not taking enough risks, where we don't see that what I do leads to a certain change, so it's not going to excite me. Because a lot of people, when I speak to them, they're like, yeah, man, I go 9, come back 5, I get the same amount of money. Doesn't matter. The company closes, I'll go somewhere else, I'll do the same thing again and again. That kind of, it's not the fault of the society. I'll talk about the mindset that can change and actually help people in their career that way too. Or some people who have had a bad experience with change. You might talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, I tried AI once, but you know, it gave me bad information. That is also another obstacle. And a lot of people believe change is a slow process, which in some cases it may be, but I have a question. Do you guys agree that change is a slow process? How many of you think change is a slow process? A lot of you? Okay, half. Change is a slow process. However, you can speed it up. Does anyone here play a music instrument? No? Wow, accountants, I mean, come on, I should have known. Let me try something else. Are any of you good at sports? All right, good. There were more hands. Do you remember the first time you tried that sport? It was slow, you were bad, right? But now if you don't look back, and just when someone comes to you, how do I become as good as this? The best thing is to remember, I wasn't this good, but you can share your experience with them, and then they can improve faster. That's the whole point of coaching. That's the whole point of trainings, right? You learn from someone else's experience to become faster. That's how change speeds up. And that is why I kept telling storytelling. You should start listening to other people's stories who have done it before, rather than experimenting your own way. Then it's going to be really slow, right? You need to go after, again, you're chasing, creating, crafting a moment of realization by chasing people and their stories. I remember like one of these talks I was giving, and this student came to me. He had a speech issue with him, and he was like, I want to start speaking like you. And I told him I wasn't born speaking like this. I had to practice. I was booed off of stage. I've been, so many experiences. But I can tell you how to do it faster than I did. And then he can, do it faster for someone else. And lastly, a lot of us, we love to sit, watch, and observe change and talk about it, right? Example, political environments. Or we might be talking about AI a lot, but are we using it? Are we actually experiencing it? On LinkedIn, there's one thing that I'm not going to say I hate, but I always question. When someone shares an article saying, this much investment going into AI, right? We're just passively observing and watching the change. We're not connecting it to our reality. We're not connecting it to a moment of realization for what we're doing today. And that, for us, is an obstacle to change. So, my first advice, after understanding change and trying to convince you that I know a thing or two about it, is remove obstacles and start chasing, right? Start chasing change, start chasing moment of realization, start counting them, and know that it can be sped up if you actually start connecting to other people's moment of realizations. And people always say, oh, at my work, they're very slow at this. They don't do this, they don't do that. I cannot do this, I cannot do that. I remember I was at Delivery Hero's office, the guys who were Talabat here. I was in the regional office giving a talk on operational excellence. And this was something everyone was saying. I asked them to do two things. First thing, I was like, write negative things about the office. Don't write your names, but give it to me. I had like 20 sheets of paper, right? And I said, the second thing I did was, name one thing you can do to make the workplace better. I had 3 pages of sheets. And half of the people were sitting angry, saying, there's nothing wrong with us, right? The point is, it doesn't have to be wrong for you to start changing or to lead a change. The thing is, it's easiest for you to start doing something differently first before you get to other people. And you find similar concepts if you go into philosophy and things like that. I'm a big fan of philosophy. I'm not going to get into that, don't worry. The other thing, second thing, how do you respond to both negatives, positives, or neutral influences? Now, neutral, positive, and negative depends on the context. But I'll give you one example. So when I first moved to Pakistan, I lived there for a while. I was going somewhere, I had a driver in a car, and some guy hit my car, right? We got out, we were like, he was an old man and his son. And I was like, sorry, you have to pay for this because you've hit my car. It was quite badly damaged. I was wearing a suit, I was on the way to a meeting. And first the guy's like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So, and then, in Pakistan, it's a different atmosphere. The whole crowd, just gathered and started looking at what's happening and giving their advices. And I was like, listen, guys, let me sort this out. Thank you very much. All of a sudden, that old man, he saw that there's a lot of people around, and he turned the story. He's like, you guy, you come with your dad's car and money, and you hit my car, and you're blackmailing me. He says this, and everyone around me is literally turning into a mob, trying to be like, this guy's the bad guy, right? And my driver is like, let's fight with them and all that. I'm like, get in the car and let's go. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? Are you weak? I'm like, no, please, get in the car and go. I went, I drank a lot of cold water, and I started walking around. You know what? Because up till that point, I had figured one thing out. I do not want negative influences to make me negative. I don't want to be like the place I am at, because I've moved around enough, and I've figured out what is a negative influence for me, what is a positive for me. Another example. How many of you run businesses here? How many of you want to run businesses here? Okay. So I train entrepreneurs as well. I've been part of running 3 incubators in Pakistan. I've done an incubation program here. I do lead venture investments for a few investment firms. And whenever people approach me to talk about starting a business, I tell them one thing. Change your environment and move into places where people see businesses being built as a positive thing, right? And whenever I start working on a new project, I stop hanging out with my friends who don't get it. You know why? Because when I'm on the phone with them, they'll give me passive comments like, that's not going to work. Meaningless. They don't know. They have never done business in their life, but they'll say it, which is okay though. I'm not saying they're bad people. But the thing is, that's where you need to realize that how are you going to respond to these influences? And that links to how you talk to yourself. Because if you get angry every time someone makes you angry, you're not going to change. You're going to stay the same because you're just going to be busy being angry, right? Third thing, once you've figured out change, you can hang out with 5 entrepreneurs, but if you're not doing what you're learning through them, you're not capturing your moment of realization and acting on it, you're not going to change. And of course, you need to know what you're going to change as well. Now, here's a quick summary of what I've gathered from a lot of people. If you want to change yourself, you talk to yourself, set a clear goal, take action. You want to change someone else's environment, connect with them, explore shared realizations, and pretend to act on it together. You want to change your career, set a milestone, list required changes, prioritize them, You want to change your business, set goals, build KPIs, monitor, and then look at your performance. You want to change the world. I know some people who have. These guys have built amazing big businesses or been some big political force here and there. I've been part of developing plans for the government. So, over there, I've always seen patience, number one. You have to build a platform based on shared values. And this is the longest way, but you have to start with changing yourself first. We're towards the end. I quickly want to share something, and then I will share something that is actually a practical tool that you could potentially use if you choose to. First, you need to understand 4 things about change. You need to look at change after everything I told you, the habits and everything. You need to now understand it a little technically. You need to understand pace of whatever you're trying to change, the impact, whether it's going to produce something good or bad, the scope. For that one thing to change, are there other milestones in the middle? And what value is it going to drive, right? So pace is something that is important. However, when I try to look at it, I look at it with 3 main elements: risk, impact, and value, and then I rank it with speed. So if I have something that is high risk but low value, I'm going to avoid or delay it. It's not needed. Let it change. If something is high in value and high in risk, that's the biggest reward but the biggest risk. I really need to be good at changing. It's just like investing. You become good at investing after losing a lot of money. You become good at changing and taking big risks once you start changing a lot. And then, of course, you have the quick wins that you can start doing immediately to feel good about changing. And incremental changes, good, but they're not really, they're kind of somewhere middle between default and intentional changes. Now, because you're all accountants, I've actually created this little thing that I use for actually guiding businesses, and I use it for my personal reasons. Let me try to share a little theory with you. This is mine. This is completely mine. It is a tool that I actually do use. What can you do when something happens, when something externally changes? What can you do? You have 3 options. You will respond to it and end up with a good result or a bad result, or you will not respond to it and you will still end up with a good result or a bad result. Agreed? Right? Now, when you do something, there's intention behind it. So the result is going to be a little more impactful, both positively and negatively, when you don't do anything about it, because the external change is going to act out in a similar way. So what you can think of it is like this. So you have 1 and -1. I don't know if you guys will understand this. If there's too mathematical, I'm sorry for that, but I think this sums up everything into a nice way. So if between 1 and -1, there is infinity. Because you can put 0.00000 infinity times and put 1, and the same way the other way, right? So you never actually reach 1 and -1 because you never actually have the best case and the worst case. It's only the one you can think of. So what I like to do is look at all the changes that I've tried before and map them. This is a randomized one, just to show you. And what happens is, if you see on the left, I responded well, I will end up there. I will learn that this change, the way I did this change was good. When I did nothing, where did it end up? Most likely, if I ended up somewhere here, I will be like, in these kind of situations, I don't want to do anything. And any decisions that I made bad would make me end up in the red zone. How does this help me? Well, I can forecast my impact of similar changes that I've done before. Imagine how, if you actually start doing that, how it can change your life, your business, and all the things you actually want to change. Because now you actually have data about it and can work with it. So that's me in my dad's office. Do you guys remember these monitors? Yep. My dad was a CFO, by the way. This is when he got the monitors. Before that, he used to do registers, right? And now I do my accounts through ChatGPT in my business. So it's a story, it's a generational story, it's ever-changing. Change is a story. First thing, learn the story, look at the data, chase the stories, change the moment of realizations, understand what's already written so you can change faster. Change is inevitable, whether you like it or not, we're changing. Every change is a story of a conflict and a resolution, right? The reason we change, why do we change? We want to do things faster. That's a conflict. We don't think they're fast enough. We constantly want to make them faster. If you think of any of the movies you like, you're in love with the conflict, not the resolution. The resolution you wait for. That is the motivation. That is the moment of realization of the conflict. The conflict makes you realize that something needs to change and you keep following until it happens. That's the motivation. And in between that is choices. If you make the right choice, you will take a faster path. If you make the wrong choice, we already talked about the graph and the mathematical errors. So in the end, let me summarize. I was speeding up in the end in consideration of time, right? The thing is, to change, you have to put yourself in environments that make change helpful, healthy for you. Secondly, remove obstacles. Thirdly, start measuring what happens when you change. Start with little things like, there's so many things that we think of. Some of us want to lose weight, some of us want to do this, X, Y, Z. Make a list, see which one helps, is the quickest. You can use the time value, the triangle that I showed you. And in the end, I want to share this. Take all the information you learned today, go back, make a list of 3 to 5 things you learned and you actually want to see how they can impact you. Think, have I tried something similar before? Remember those 2 stories that I told you where I connected moment of realizations? Try to speed up your moment of realization, right? That will give you motivation. 3 and 5, enough to make you motivated and annoyed about one of them. Write a 5-bullet story working backward. Think of where you want to be, work backward, see what moments of realization steps you need to get there, and identify your past patterns. Did you hesitate in a similar place before? Why? And what do you need to do to take a leap? Or have you taken a leap before? And in the end, note down the 2 possible moment of realizations that are the quickest, most nearest to you. An example, an example would be joining the accounting club, So that's where you can find a lot of people who think together about change and the discussion continues. And I really hope if you practice that, you will be able to actually feel change faster in your life, feel more empowered, make more money, and enjoy life more and get excited. So in the end, remember, moments of realization, change begins the moment you finally start seeing something differently. So I will end this with my question again. Do you feel more excited about change after me blabbering for a while? Do you? Louder, come on guys. Okay. We did the wooing and the clapping. Do you know how to stomp? Do you guys know how to stomp? Okay, now I want to know how excited you are about changing and growing and making more money. And you're going to clap and woo and stomp at the same time. All right? 1, 2, 3. That was good. I'm going to ask you to do it one more time. I'll tell you why. I need to record that. If you don't mind. Yeah. Okay, are we guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to spend the day with you guys. If you have any, follow me on LinkedIn. I also will be sharing a podcast soon with a legend of finance. Follow me. And of course, thank you to Ayman and the whole team, Zubair and everyone.